For many years I've been looking for lenses that produce great bokeh. After trying out various brands and lens mounts, I decided to focus on M42 screw mount lenses. The best M42 lenses, despite being over 40 years old, can produce amazing results, often better than much more expensive modern primes. They're great value for money and a lot of fun to use manually, and they can easily be adapted to most digital cameras. I posted 4 separate videos about the best lenses divided into 4 lens groups. Wider than 50mm, 50mm, the classic fast 50s, 55 to 58mm, and over 58mm. I haven't tried every single old lens that was made in each group, but I've selected most of the highest rated lenses, with 1 or 2 exceptions that I'll mention as I go along. In this video I'm going to recommend the best 55 to 58mm lenses. I've included photos to back up my recommendations, and provided a link below to my Flickr stream, where the photos taken by these and other lenses have had over 7 million views. Before we start looking at the lenses, a few words about what makes a great bokeh lens. Good lenses produce smooth blur that is not too distracting or busy, that helps isolate faces or objects and gives an image a 3D look. Another feature of a good lens is that it's sharp wide open and produces relatively seamless transitions between in and out of focus areas. However, the great bokeh lenses can produce more than this. Some of the best lenses produce lovely, dreamy, almost watercolory images. Interestingly, a number of these lenses are older lenses with limited coatings. They flare a bit more, they have lower color contrasts, but after some post-processing, they produce beautiful results. Lenses that produce clear and smooth bokeh bubbles can really enhance an image. Some photographers also like onion ring effects, but I personally find rings distracting in most cases. Then there are the famous bokeh swirls, a trademark of the Russian Helios lenses, and some others. And bokeh is not just about wide open shots. Some lenses can produce an extraordinary range of effects stopped down in the right conditions. Starbursts, fascinating shapes and flares, for example. The best bokeh lenses I'm talking about will have a strong combination of these characteristics. Now the 55 to 58mm lenses. Here we have the granddaddy of them all, the Zeiss Jena Biotar 58 f2 from the late 1940s. And the Biotar's Russian offspring, the Helios 44s. One of the first M42 Takumas made, the 58 f2. And a whole load of Takuma 55s. I'll select the best one for the final analysis. And the fastest M42 in commercial production, the Tomioka 55 f1.2. There are other good M42 lenses out there, and one great one is missing, the super rare Zeiss Jena Pancolor 55 f1.4. Let's start with the Helios 44s and the Takuma 55s to narrow it down a bit. There are 5 versions of the Helios 44 here. They're all slightly different in terms of optical design and coatings, and they produce different results. The more coatings, the better the flare control, colours and contrasts, but the later versions seem to swirl less than the earlier ones. The earliest version is this chrome 44 with 13 blades. The other Helioses have 8 blades. This 58 f2 lens is fun to use with its preset aperture mechanism, and it's sharp and swirly wide open. Like a lot of lenses with limited coatings, the images often need a contrast and colour boost, but the raw material is actually very good. The latest version here is this 44 M4 with multi-coated glass. I've also got the 44-3 and the 44M, and I produced a video you may like to see about the similarities and differences between these lenses all the way up to the 44M7. They're all fine lenses with excellent bokeh, getting progressively sharper across the frame and more contrasty as they evolve the old Biotar design and coatings. The most popular and well-known version is this Helios 44-2, and if it's swirly bokeh you're after, then the Helios 44-2 is the one to buy. It swirls more than the later versions. The earlier 44 swirls too, and its extra blades are useful stop down, but my version of the 44-2 just wins on swirlier bokeh. The Helios 44-2 swirls can be quite elusive on occasions, so it's a challenge to find the right conditions for swirls. It's not a one-trick pony, it's a lot more fun than that. It can take lovely images with smooth bokeh as well. It has a good minimum focus distance, and it's center sharp wide open, which is a big plus. Now let's look at these Takuma 55s. These lenses are not as center sharp as the Helios 44s, and they don't really swirl that much, but they produce lovely painterly bokeh, some of the best conventionally smooth bokeh of all vintage lenses. I've collected all these versions because they're all slightly different in design and results, but I'm not going to go into the details about each one. The oldest ones here are these Auto-Takumars, the 1.8 Zebra and the F2. There's not much difference in the images from these two, so I'll pick the Zebra lens here. It's such a sexy lens. The later Takumars are all exceptional lenses for their age. The design was changed from the early lenses and the number of blades reduced from 10 to 6. As new versions of the Takuma are introduced, they refined the glass and coatings, and the rendering and flare control of the lenses got better and better. So purely in terms of optical performance, I'd pick the latest SMC Takuma 55 1.8 from these four. However, comparing the last Takuma 55 with the first, I'm actually going to go for the early lens. Its limited coatings make it a more fascinating lens. The bokeh is dreamy and fluid, and images can show a glowing and rather ephemeral quality. Back to the Russian Helios 44-2. How does it compare to the lens it was based on, the Zeiss Jena Biotar? At the end of the war, the Russians took the Zeiss designs and whatever parts were left and produced the Helios 44, based on the Biotar optical designs. The Biotar's body is smaller than the Helios, but it packs in an impressive 17 blades into this small body. The Helios only has 8 blades. I've taken hundreds of snaps with both lenses, and it's clear that the Biotar's bokeh does swell, but not as much as the Helios. The Biotar has similar levels of sharpness wide open, and those 17 blades certainly help to produce smooth bokeh stop down. So it's a tough choice between these two lenses. I'm going to go for the Helios. It's swirlier wide open, and ergonomically, I actually prefer the larger body. Next, this old Takuma 58 f2. It's a Sonner design and a very rare lens. It's the widest film era Sonner lens made. Sonner designs have a distinctive bokeh, different to the Takuma 55s. I found it a bit busier and less smooth, which can be a good thing in some situations. However, the bokeh details can be rather distracting sometimes. So the 55 wins this particular contest. There are 3 more Japanese lenses here, and what great lenses these are. 2 of the lenses were made by Tomioka, a manufacturer that has a cult following these days. The Mamiya Sekor 55 f1.4 is one of those lenses. It produces lovely wide open bokeh, as you'd expect from a fast 55. The issue I have with this lens is that it's quite soft wide open. It's not a major problem, but it's not as sharp in particular as the Helios, for example. The other Tomioka lens is this absolute beast, the f1.2 Auto Revuenon. These lenses are very expensive, and in many respects they're worth it. They're heavy, impressive, and guess what? They're also radioactive. The Fujinon is from a series of 50 and 55mm lenses from Fuji that have a lot of admirers. This lens never disappoints, and the bokeh is interesting and vibrant. I do like this composition, but the bokeh balls could be a little better rendered. The other two will do a better job, so the Fujinon has to go. Back to the Tomiokas, and there's no contest really. The 55 f1.2 wins hands down. Wide open, with such a narrow depth of field, if you can nail the focus, then it's sharp. However, it doesn't really matter if you don't completely get the focus right, because the lens's blur is so wonderful. The amazing thing about the wide open bokeh is how you can make it look super smooth in some images, but totally eccentric in others, like you're looking down a tunnel, and stop down it's razor sharp. Ideally it would have more than 8 blades, but if you buy an expensive f1.2 lens, you're probably going to use it wide open most of the time anyway. Comparing the Takuma against the Tomioka, well, it won't surprise you to hear that the Takuma just doesn't stand a chance. So the final in this group is between the Helios 44-2 and the Tomioka. Now, how does the Helios fare? This is more difficult. The Tomioka costs 20 times as much as this Helios. Is it worth 20 times as much? Well, yes, it probably is, given its rarity and how it performs. However, purely in terms of bokeh, it's a much closer call. In fact, I'd say the Helios is just as interesting as a Bokeh monster as the Tomioka, for different reasons, of course. I could easily discard the Tomioka at this point. However, in the end, I'm going to give the top spot to the Tomioka. It may be expensive, but it's a blast to use. And we're not looking for the best value for money lens, we're looking for the best bokeh lens. And there are not many lenses in the world that can render blur like this. Hope you've enjoyed this video and it's given you some insights into these great lenses. It would be really good to read any comments or suggestions you have below. I'm posting 3 other videos on the best bokeh lenses, so please subscribe if you're interested.